Hello, happy Monday. Mistral and I are back today to talk about the Sacral Center. And I'm also really excited slash really sad that today is my last day in this office. So it will be the last day that you see me here with this background. So I am so excited to chat with Mistral about the Sacral Center. So drop your design below. We would love to know, do you have a defined sacral? Are you a generator, a manifesting generator? Or are you a non-sacral, a projector, manifester, or reflector? So she will be right here. Hello, Mistral.
Yay, that's sacral today. Such a powerful center that we are talking about.
Yes, and it's so great, right? I love our chats because I'm a non-sacral. I'm a projector. I am undefined. But you have not only the powerhouse of the sacral, but that fuels your throat too as a manifesting generator.
That's right. I have my sacral. I have channels coming out of my sacral. There's a lot going on down there. And as most people who know me very well, I'm constantly on the move and using that sacral energy to create, shift, pivot, create some more. So there's a lot that happens in my life with this activated sacral.
Yes. So again, hello to everyone joining us. If you know your human design, drop it in the comments. We would love to know if you're have a defined sacral, a generator or a manifesting generator, or if you're a non-sacral, a projector, a manifester, or reflector. Oh, and it looks like we lost Mistral. So hopefully she will be able to come back onto our live. While Mercury is no longer retrograding, there's still those next 10 days that are still a shadow period. So I wonder if she's having a little bit of technical difficulty. So sorry that her frozen face is still here to join us to continue keeping her sacral energy with us. But while she's navigating those, oh, here she is. Hopefully this will work for us. Are you back, Mistral? Don't we all? There we go. Don't we love technology?
Yes. Oh my God. So sorry, everyone. I'm back. Hi, Joanna. Good afternoon. Hi, Jen. Good to be back again.
Yes.
Oh,
So
okay.
if you feel ready, let's jump into a defined sacral, right? Or first, let's just talk about the sacral center in general, right? Do you want to tell us a bit about what the center is, what it does?
Yeah. So the Sacral Center is actually, I used to be really jealous of the Sacral Center for a number of reasons. And even though I have it defined, it's not my authority, it's not my decision-making process, right? But one thing I do love about my sacral is I still, even without that being my authority, I still understand how to use it in my design. And it gives me that clear or in certain situations with certain things that I want to follow. So the sacral is really a motor center. It's an energy center that allows us to have that consistent amount of energy flowing through our body. And like you said, for me as a manifesting generator, it really helps fuel my throat with through manifestation. And because of some of my connections connecting to my other defined centers, it really allows for me to process a lot of really amazing information and use that processing system to fuel what I want to create around joy and creativity and what lights me up essentially as a manifesting generator or as a generator with an activated sacral. And I don't know how you felt when you found out that you had an undefined sacral, but I know when I found out that I had this defined sacral, I was like, yes. But what I got jealous about is that I couldn't use that as my initial authority to make decisions because as a manifesting generator, I love to make decisions quickly. With my emotional authority, I have to wait. And so for me, it was this sort of struggle of going back and forth. But with my defined sacral, I think what it allows me to do is tune into and really harness that energy. And for someone like myself, I think we talked about this on one of our lives previously about the sacral, is that I use my fists actually on my belly to help me activate it and sort of help that energy rise in times when I'm not feeling 100%. I actually hopped on this live before we went live and told Jen that today I'm just not feeling it. And that's exactly what I kind of did before I got on this live, was just sort of pound that sacral a little bit, gently, of course, to help bring that energy up and support me in now speaking my truth out loud. And of course, now I feel like I'm in my flow, right?
Yes. Yes. Yeah, I love that. And really noticing that consistent access to that sacral, how it works for you, how you get to use it as your gift, as a powerhouse for you. And, as an undefined sacral, right? As a projector, it's not that I don't have this energy, this life force energy. It's just not consistent for me. I don't get to flow with it. I don't get to come back to it and rely on it. It kind of just flows through me. It comes, then it goes. It's not something that I can really harness and utilize and rely on. So with it undefined, when I found out that I was a non-sacral, it was so much relief. It was like, oh, no wonder why trying to hustle and do things all the time burns me out, right? Before I knew about human design 4 years ago, I was priding myself on 12-hour days. And I was like exhausted and burning out when I understood, oh, I don't have this sacral center defined. I do have a couple gates within my sacral, but I don't have that defined energy to keep me going. When something lights me up, I work in spurts, right? I'll get the energy, I'll have motivation, and now I know that I need to do it right then. Otherwise, this energy is just going to kind of fizzle out, and I'm not going to have it. And then that's when I need to go back into rest. So yeah, I was a little jealous of the sacral center, you could say, because and in a way I still am, because I work with so many sacrals. It's like, oh man, if I just had access to ask myself yes or no questions and know the answer fully in my body, man, that would be so great. But I don't work like
Yes.
that. I was not designed like that. So I really had to learn to honor the gifts that I do have and the ways that I do work.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I hear you on that. And I just want to say, hi, Kristen. Thanks for joining. She's here. Um, I was as you were talking, I was sort of thinking with the sacral, I was like, oh yeah. So, and I want to come back to this because I also want to speak to the yes, no questions as well. And I don't want to forget those too, because this is important. But for someone who doesn't have a defined sacral like yourself, how do you know when the energy comes in? And like, what's your sign that you have energy around that? Because I think that might be really important for people who don't have that defined sacral and kind of just like, oh, well, I don't have that, so I can't do X, Y, Z. And I think it can be very disempowering for people when they don't have the full picture or understand what it actually means. And so, how do you know when that sacral is kind of lit up at any given time, or that you're receiving the energy? I guess is maybe a better way.
Yeah, I guess I have two answers for it. The first answer
Okay.
I will say is getting to know what that sacral energy feels like. Like mine, um, uh, obviously functions very differently. I've heard other projectors talk about it as their what word do I want to use here? Their private parts tingle and it comes
Mm.
and goes. So, yes, it's kind of like a superpower. And that's how some of those women know, because that area starts to tingle, it gets ignited, right? The sacral connects and is responsible with our sexuality, with our sex drive. So, that gets really lit up for them. Where I've noticed for me, it's more of like my legs, like I get this flushing, tingling down my legs that grounds me. Because my second answer to your question is more based on individual design, right? I have a defined root, so it gives me that drive, that kind of like adrenaline pressure to act. So when I feel that and I feel creative and I feel the energy, my defined heart is also like, yes, we have the willpower to do this, right? The other parts of me, especially my emotional authority, gets lit up. That's when I know, like, okay, I have energy. Yes, we got to do this before we fizzle out. So I can very more easily tap into my other defined centers where I have consistent energy, where I know that energy is there. So the sacral comes in and it just kind of like lets everybody else know, like, hey, like we're game. Now's the time. Let's go do this.
Yes, beautiful. And so, my follow-up question for that is really, okay, so how do you know when the energy's gone? And when that energy is gone, how do you say finish your project or know when to pick back up on this project? Because I think that that can also be a little bit challenging if a projector or someone with a non-sacral can be like, well, now what? My energy's gone and I haven't finished yet. So what does that look like?
Oh my gosh, I'm just going to repeat that question for everyone because any
Okay.
non-sacral, as well as generators too, right? How do we know when that sacral energy is gone? Because pretty much
Mm,
everyone that I see and work with does not know the answer to that question. And
yeah.
it's because we don't have reliable access, we as non-sacrals. So it can be even more challenging to know. For generators, I see them kind of like taking it for granted, right? You always have this, so you're not really staying aware as to when it's starting to decrease. So
Mhm.
I think the answer is unique for anyone. It's for everyone. It's really bringing your awareness to that motor center, right? Because we have three other motor centers. I have the other three defined. So I really needed to tap into my awareness to know, what does this motor feel like and how do I know when it's on and running out? Because I don't want to mistake that energy for the sacral energy. So
Mm,
to
okay.
answer your question, what does my sacral feel like when it's out? My body feels tired. And I say that because right, our mind can hijack us. So my mind is like, go, go, go. You still got this. You got to do this. You should do this, right? All my conditioning pops in, and whoever I'm around with my undefined mind,
Mm,
I come in there too and be
so
like,
true.
maybe it doesn't talk so nicely about all the things we have to do. Rarely is it like, hey, you put in a lot of work. You did a really good job. You're not feeling the energy anymore. It's kind of gone through you. Why don't you relax and lay down? Right? That's
Mm.
really what my body is saying. And a lot of times, the other piece of awareness is who we're with, right? Because when I get off a call with you, Mr. with your
Mm,
sacral, that I absorb all that wonderful sacral energy, sometimes I'll utilize it and I'm like, okay, I still got this. Like I'm gonna go do all this stuff. But I know it's almost like a flushing out of the body, that it's just, I really need to recognize that I'm tired and my body is saying, wow, we need rest.
yeah. And how beautiful that you've learned this so that you can honor that. Because, like you were saying, when you're working, in corporate 9 to 5, and you were sort of being proud and being accomplished by working these 12-hour days and running straight to burnout. And I know a lot of generators and manifesting generators do run into burnout. I know I'm totally a victim of that because of that conditioning still, and because we have the energy to go, 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 to the point where when I was a boss of people, I was like, why don't they have the same work ethic as me? Like, what's wrong with them? You know what? Way before I knew about human design, right? I was probably working with projectors, these poor people. And here I was as a manifesting generator being like, chop, 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 like, go like me. And these poor people don't have that sacral. Now, of course, like you said, when they're in my presence, they can really use my sacral to help initiate, to help get things done. But if I'm not there, or I send them off, or they go home and I'm expecting them to work from home still, that doesn't work in the same way. And so that's really, that was a big realization for me. I kind of look back and was like, ooh, I'm so glad now that I understand that, because when I am with people who have that undefined sacral, I can just be more aware. And especially like my kids, I have a manifestor and a projector, and they do not have the they don't have that defined sacral. And so it's really important for me to recognize for them as their kids that you're not me, and their dad's a generator. So it's like, we've got parents who have the sacral, we give them the energy, but we have to recognize when they're kind of done and not push them too far. And then I wanted to come back to if you have something else to say on this, I don't want to move forward.
Well, I think you wanted to come back to the yes no, because
Yeah.
it's really hard as a non-sacral. So let me say it this way: if I was a generator, I could very easily ask myself, hey, do I have the energy to keep going, and get that yes no answer. But
Mhm.
a lot of times, if I ask that question, my mind pops in and my
Yes.
mind hijacks, and my mind is like, yes, of course you can. Like, you haven't done enough today, right? My inner critic
Yeah.
starts speaking really loudly, so that I listen to them, which is not my body and my true aligned energy as myself.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's really important to recognize, because I think so many people get caught in that trap of, you haven't done enough today because you haven't worked your 9 to 5, or you haven't put in the 8 or 9 hour day that everyone else is. But what they don't realize is that projectors are oftentimes way more efficient than someone like myself as a manifesting generator, because you see a very clear path and you're very boop, 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 get it done, versus me who's like, let's go over here and let's do a little bit of this and how about a little bit of that, right? Which is great. That's how I do things, but it's
Yes.
not as efficient, right, as a projector. And so knowing that projectors can really have that 4 hour workday, but complete 8 hours of work in that 4 hours is what bosses need to know these days.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
I was just
Got
going to come back to that yes, no, because I think that's really important to talk for manifesting generators and generators here, because I know for myself with that conditioning, just like you had, right? Work that 9 to 5, put in more hours, take work home, like climb the corporate ladder. And you're not going to climb it if you're not constantly working and constantly putting in hours and constantly showing that you can do this, this, and this. And so I think generators and manifesting generators often get caught in this loop where they're constantly trying to maybe impress somebody or trying to climb the ladder or trying to take on other people's work just because they feel it's not being done fast enough or efficiently enough or whatever. And they can get burnt out on the sacral when they're not listening or not using those yes, no questions. And then also wanted to come back to, for example, when I was in corporate, I used to have people come to me, and if they came to me with yes, no answers, boom, I could answer them straight away. I knew what was the right decision. I knew what needed to happen. But if they came to me without a yes, no question and reframed it more as like, well, what do you think about this? Or what do you think about that? Or what if we did this way and this way? And there wasn't a clear yes, no. I almost felt like I couldn't get that message from my sacral. And therefore sometimes I felt not as smart as I thought I should be, right? Because I wasn't able to use my body to tune into it, and instead was using my logical mind. And so I think that's important for us to remember as well, that our decision making so much for me comes from that sacral. Even though I have the emotional authority and need to wait, I do get a direct, like if I want pizza for dinner, I know yes or no, right? Those are like sort of those immediate sacrals. Or if there's a safety issue that's happening, I can immediately decide what needs to happen in the moment. And so I think it's really important to come back to that as is yes, no. And if you're indecisive and you have a sacral, a defined sacral, so the little sacral piece is colored in, that yes, no questions are the way for you to go. Have your partner, have your spouse, have your boss, coworker, whatever situation you're in, reframe into those yes, no questions.
Yeah, and I just want to clarify too that this yes no that we're talking about is the gut,
Mm.
is that gut feeling. It really comes from the belly of your gut, like a hit, like an uh-huh or uh-uh. It usually comes with like sacral sounds too, that you make sounds. If you're not aware of this, ask someone that's really close to you, a partner, a close family member, friend, because they'll likely know. And it can be fun to kind of know and point those out beforehand. Um, Yes. So the sacral, the other thing that I wanted to say with this yes, no, and I love how you worded this, Mistral, that people were coming to you and you didn't know how to answer. It's because the sacral wants to respond, right? That's the strategy of a generator and a manifesting generator. But when you're not asked a clear, concise question, it gets really overwhelming, especially depending on your definition of like, well, what do you want me to respond to? And it was so cool noticing types, right? Generators, sacrals, and non-sacrals with my clients, because it was the ones that I ask, and how do you feel about this? What do you think about this? Right? These grand open-ended questions. Didn't want to guide them or mislead them anywhere, ask a leading question. And they would just stare at me like a deer in headlights. And they're like,
Yes.
I don't know. Yet I would ask,
Yep.
do you feel sad? Do you feel happy? And they were very easily able to say, yes, no. So if someone, if you ask someone an open-ended question, they're staring back at you, really give them something specific to respond. Ask them yes, no questions. I just did a masterclass with an amazing generator, Kayla J. Sorry, gosh, Kayla G. And she so beautifully said, you're doing your homework. Give me a question to respond to. She very explicitly said, if you just do your homework, I'm not going to know what you want me to respond to. There's a lot there, and I don't have the energy, even though she's a generator, to just be giving out advice in a free masterclass. But when we have a specific question, say, hey, I would like your feedback on this. What do you think about this specifically? Then she was able to wait, and respond so well because we gave her something to respond to. So that's really how the sacral works, right? It's pulling in that life force energy, giving you that aura, and it wants to respond more so easily in a yes no because that's not a lot of energy and that's very simple for the sacrals. So I love how you worded that.
Yeah. And I really think that people have, so I want to like get rid of this misconception too, where people sort of on the internet say like, follow your gut, follow your gut. And I like, well, that doesn't really work for people like yourself, right? That doesn't work
Right.
for
It
even
makes me
for
cringe, like worst advice I've ever been given.
right. And that can be really confusing, right? For people like, well, I don't feel anything in my gut, or I don't understand what that feeling is meant to be. Or like, what does it mean to follow my gut? And so I think it's really important to take that note of that yes, no has a different feeling for everybody. And for me, it's more of like I get a zing up my body of like, that sounds fun. Let's do that. Woohoo, like that versus if it's a no, for me, it's a real sinking, almost heavy, and it kind of just makes me want to like pull away.
Mhm.
And I was able, when I learned about human design, I learned about my defined sacral, I was like, oh, like I kind of already knew what that meant because you kind of, when your body gives you those clues, you can kind of figure it out. But then I was like, oh, but now I understand the purpose behind it and the fact that it is a part of my decision making. And even for myself with the emotional, I don't need to, when you have to make a decision in the moment, I don't need to necessarily wait for my emotional authority because I can get a yes, no from my sacral, which is helpful.
Right.
But it's more of my bigger decisions, right? Like, where do I want to live in life? Do I want to take this job? Do I want to start a new business? Do I want to invest in this business coach? Those are the kind of things where I do need to, see my initial reaction in the sacral, and if I can't determine that or it's not sure, then using my emotional authority to help me really figure out exactly what the decision is. But I do think the sacral is such a good landing point for just understanding how to get back in our body. And so that was huge for
Yeah.
me. So when I say that, how do we teach projectors to get back in their body with their sacral when they don't get that yes no? How did you learn to tune into that body movement? Because I think, as generators and manifesting generators, when they learn about this, they're like, oh, okay, I can tune into that. I can practice, like going to the refrigerator, opening it up, kind of putting my body in front of different foods and hearing that sacral response. But how did you learn to come back into your body instead of staying up here in your logical mind as somebody without a defined sacral?
I think the simple answer to that is coming back to your inner authority, right? Our authority guides us. That is somewhere in our body that we can easily focus on. So that's where we can really, to answer your question of how do you bring the awareness back into the body, like that's where you focus. Mental projectors, reflectors, little different. Let's talk if you're one of those, because I would have a different answer. But the other piece too is I believe I have three gates defined in my sacral. Let me look quickly so I can accurately speak to this. Yes, three gates. So it was really helpful for me to look at these three gates that have colors next to them. They have a circle around them. Those are defined. Those are active in my chart. I have consistent, reliable energy in those ways. I think of them like personality traits. So one is about nurturing, gate 27. We just transited out of gate 27, and it was all about fueling ourselves, nurturing ourselves so that we could pour from an overflowing cup. So once I realized this, I was like, oh, that's sacral energy. I always have the energy. And if you know me, you know I am all about self care and self love, all of that. So I know that I always have the energy to nurture myself. And that's something that I have to do in order to be able to do the work that I do, give back to others. I have gate 42, all about celebration. This is huge for me. How am I really celebrating? It's huge in my gene keys. I need to detach. Okay, I know what that is. Then I also have gate 9, right? Don't give in to the inertia. Don't be confused with the inertia, which is the shadow energy of gate 9, because, and I guess that's kind of what clicks for me, because if I feel myself gearing up, getting into inertia, I think, all right, have I been around generators? Do I need to lay down to release their sacral energy? Or like when I kind of get like spinning kind of, I like my whole body starts to buzz when I'm with a generator for long enough, like literally my whole body is buzzing, and I really need to focus on my breath and regulate.
Mm,
A different answer that I have would be to those with a completely open sacral. And I have a friend that has a completely open sacral. And the message with all completely open centers is to use it as a mirror to reflect back. So, really, to know your own energy and constantly be checking in what is mine, what is theirs, and seeing, okay, am I above my own energy? How do I calm down, or do I need to ride this out, express it, get it out?
yeah.
And knowing that, like, you really amplify other people too. So just finding that it's almost like a consistent stillness to let it all flow through, regardless of what energy is there. So I hope that's clear enough for those
No,
listening and
I
watching.
thought it was clear enough. I don't, but it's, if it's new for you, reach out to Jen because she can help you with this, because I think understanding that sacral and how it works, and like when you're sort of like turned on and in the moment and excited to do something, and then when you lose it, I think understanding that is really key, whether you're in a 9 to 5 or in your business. I know a lot of women who have come to me to help them with their business with that undefined sacral. They just, I can post for like a week and then I lose it. And so it's coming up with ways on how to, well, when you're in that flow, how do we leverage that so that when you're not in the flow, you can still be showing up online, you can still be in your business, you can still be doing all the things you need to be doing without feeling the pressure of having to be like the influencer or the other coach that you see who's constantly showing up. They might be constantly showing up because they're in a different flow, they have different centers defined, and that is huge when you start understanding that about yourself. Or it could be in your corporate job where you're like, my partner who I'm competing with in a to get the next job raise or whatever, job promotion, understanding how you work best is going to allow you to shine so much clearer for your boss to be able to see like all of your amazing qualities. And so I think that's really important. And I'm just looking at the sacral now in the chart, and I think what's so powerful about the sacral is it connects to so many different energy centers. And so it's
Yeah.
almost like a key to your human design, whether it's completely open or whether it is completely defined. It's really important to understand that flow so that you can tap into it and understand how to leverage it when you are in your flow.
Yeah, and I really think, I help people manage their energy, right? That's kind of what I do in the personal development field. So the sacral is really the center that you need to look at first and foremost to see how is it flowing, because when we don't have awareness there, when you burn out regardless of your type, it's too late. Like, you've already lost the ability to manage. You are down and out for the count. And I know for me, it takes me like a week to come out of burnout. So I can't afford, and I
Yeah.
don't want to choose to live my life like that. So, really understanding my sacral, how it works, and how I can function in this world with my aligned true self energy is why I've been on this journey and why I help other people, because you don't have to live a life of burnout, and the sacral is a huge key player when it comes to burnout.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And I hear you because I've been on burnout too. And my body, when I'm in burnout, totally like disintegrates from the inside out almost. It's like
Yeah.
yeah, just like things flare up, right? So like you get gut problems, or I get lung problems, or I get sick, or I'm just like constantly tired, or my adrenals run out. It's like it's so connected to everything in our body that it's really, really important to manage that and to recognize it before it goes too far. So important.
Yeah, and it's such a beautiful center. Like, when I see generators really in their alignment, focusing on what lights them up, honoring their design, their openness, their unique way of being, like, it is so beautiful to see them embodying that satisfaction and leaving frustration behind. Like, it really
Behind.
inspires
Yeah.
me to find my success. Like, I don't have to be bitter. I can leave that behind. Let me find alignment. Let me really honor my sacral, because I certainly don't want to use energy that I don't have. So yeah, it's a big piece.
Yeah, totally. And I just wanted to say, what was I going to say around that? Because I thought that was really profound what you were talking about with the energy management. Because, oh, that's what I want to say. So as someone who like generators and manifesting generators, I was saying like kind of get caught up in that constant work because of that energy flow.
Yes.
And one thing I started to realize is that, and one thing I've had to really decondition from is that my self-care and um, the sort of the stuff, so in building a business in particular, right, is that I would feel like I constantly have to be on social media, always sending an email, always connecting with people. If I wasn't doing that, I wasn't making money, right?
Mhm.
And that's such a lie because there's so much behind the scenes that we have to do to be able to prep ourselves so that when we show up, whether it's at work, online, for our family, that we are just radiating that life force energy instead of coming to that as a shell because we've come to the burnout of just like go, 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 do, instead of being who we're meant to
Mhm.
be and showing up in our energy because that is enough. And we don't
Yeah.
need to go above and beyond that. And that's really important for people to remember.
Yeah. So as we get closer to us ending this live, I want to ask you, Mistral, as a defined sacral, would you say that when you don't get that hit of yes, like right for you, it's that zing upwards, someone else, it might be a full body yes, it might be that gut punch that says, uh-huh, we're gonna do this. So would you say if you don't get that, but it's not a clear no, it's just not a clear yes, that it is a no or a not right now?
That's a really good question. And I think that's something I'm honestly still learning because I'm still deconditioning from the go, go, go. I worked in nonprofits for a long time, and anybody who has worked in nonprofits understands that it's kind of you wear a lot of different hats and there's a lot of different things to get done. So I feel like I am still deconditioning from that. And so when I do get that heck yes, it's obvious, right? It's very obvious it's coming. When I ask myself and I don't get anything and I don't get a no and I don't get a yes, I used to sit there in confusion going, well, like this isn't working. This isn't happening for me. So I don't understand. And that's where I have to rely on my emotional authority because I might come back to it and maybe it will be a hell yes, or maybe it will be still neutral. And so I think for me, as I've deconditioned and learned to follow into it, I've learned to notice other parts of my body that might give me a little bit of response. Like I sometimes I get something out of my spleen, which is where I get my instinct from. So sometimes I get like a little something there that tells me,
Mm.
or I get like an emotional hit in my solar plexus where I just feel like, and I've learned to tune into like the tightness is kind of a no and the positive things are a yes. But then coming back to as well is that when we talked about this on one of our other lives, is that oftentimes for emotional authority, like a 60% or like a 40%, well, here, a 60% might be a heck yes, right? If it's like a 60% yes versus like a 40%, you're like, I'm kind of there, but I'm kind of not. Like maybe really just is a no. And I think that just comes back to really understanding you and what is lighting you up and understanding like as and also being ready to pivot if you're doing it and you step into it and you're like, this is not lighting me up anymore, and being willing to step back and be like, okay, I'll let that drop.
Yeah.
Did that answer your question? I hope.
I, yeah, and I think really what I'm hearing in what you said too is that really it's different for everyone, and this is why self-awareness of the sacral center is so important, as well as deconditioning it. Because if you have a really conditioned sacral, it's gonna be hard to trust it, really.
Yeah. Yep. So true. So
Yeah.
true. So true.
All right. Well, anything else to share as we wrap this up? Anything that comes to mind
I
that
think
we
we've
haven't
said
covered?
most of, I mean, there's obviously always more to
I
cover,
know.
but I think we're good for today.
Right. Oh, well,
Thanks for
beautiful.
joining.
Thanks for
Reach out
joining,
to us if you need
everyone.
it.
We'll
Mhm.
be back here next Monday, 3 p.m. Eastern. We'll be talking about the spleen. But of course, if you have any questions about the sacral, anything that we talked about today, your gut feelings, your yes, nos, reach out to me as a projector, as a non-sacral, as someone who works
Mhm.
on the personal internal guidance, or reach out to Mistral, your sacral being, your manifesting generator, your business guru to help guide you in all those places.